Hi there, I'm Tia Curtis with the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild. We're doing our third installment of the block of every other month, and that means we're going to do applique. We started out with this Lone Star, then we moved to these strip piece triangles, and I thought it was looking kind of stiff, so I decided to add a bit of whimsy with an applique border, needle turn specifically. I think it's a lot cleaner than raw edge applique. The fun thing about applique is that you can make it really your own. You can cut out any kind of shape you want. I chose some tulips with these little berries, but I'm going to add in some poppies as well. Those are really fun. Okay, for hand applique you need a little bit different tools than you do for regular piecing and sewing. You do still need the sewing machine to sew down the vine or the stem, but other than that you really don't. You need some good sewing needles, you need thread that's the same color as the pieces you're going to applique on. If you have the same color thread, your stitches look really good and your little applique pieces look like you really know what you're doing. You need some just utility thread to make circles and to baste. You need pins, you need paper and cardboard, and this is a piece from a Lego toy box, and I think this one is a cardboard from a cereal box. So you need some cardboard to make templates, you need circles, tin foil, you need pretty fabric, and a pencil, and a rotary cutter and scissors. So pretty much the same stuff. We're just going to use it a little bit differently. Okay? Alright, so for this needle turn applique, we're just going to use really simple shapes. We're going to use a little berry. We're going to use a long leaf. We're going to use 3 circles of different sizes. And we're going to use a tulip shape with this little center. Now obviously this is your work. You can use all of it. You can use just 1 or 2 of them. Doesn't matter. But what makes it really fun is the bias tape, which is the stem. So after you get all your pieces cut out, however, whichever pieces you want to use, you get your pieces cut out, and then you have to lay it out before you baste it down. And when we're just going to use just regular old school glue to glue our pieces in place so we see if they're in the places that we like. So this is how I have this vine laid out. And I don't know what plant this is. It's not a real one. This is strictly fantasy. So maybe these are just the life cycles of these tulip things. I wanted the stem to kind of snake along, and then I wanted the little flowers to grow off of it. But it was looking too bland. It looked kind of like this. It was boring. So I needed to add some more stuff to it, which is why I added more of these berries and these little poppy looking things. So you just need to find a layout that's pleasing for you and use your glue stick to glue the things down where you want them so you can put it up on your design wall. So I'm going to glue this poppy over here because I think that's where it'll be good. So glue down your important things first, which to me the hierarchy was the tulips were the most important, then the poppies, then the leaves, then the berries. So tulip, poppy, leaf, berry. Okay, I'm going to show you a really easy way to make bias. And bias is what I'm using for the stems, but you can use it for, you can do a lot with bias. It's really awesome and it's really easy to make. what you need is you need to cut the fabric on the bias. So you're going to need a 45-degree cut. And you can get a lot of bias from a fat quarter. So this one I've already been cutting bias out of. I'm just going to show you how I do it. And I just fold it so it's easy to cut with one slice with my ruler. And I make my bias 1 1/4 inch wide. And then you just cut it. I'm going to cut 2 just so I can show you how I attach them for long strings. So here's the second one. And you're going to sew this together on your sewing machine just like you would, you know, to make bias to bind your quilt. So you just make sure you have like a 1/4 inch ear, and then you sew that down. And then we're going to baste it with a long basting stitch. Let's go to the sewing machine so I can show you. So we're going to sew our 2 pieces of bias together. Just keep some little dog ear things here so it'll match up better. Alright, now comes the basting part. So make your stitches as long as they can be. On my Bernina, the longest stitch is number 5. So you make your stitches as long as your machine can do it. We're going to take these stitches out after we've sewn our stem down to our background. So my favorite thing about bias is how you can manipulate it using a hot iron, pins, and a ruler. So if I just want like a simple wavy vine, all I have to do is just guide my iron along and the bias pretty much stays in the shape that I put it in. Now I can make this bias super loopy. Like you can like literally make loops with it if that's what you want to do. But you'll just need to pin it in place. Bias is cool. So if you don't do that, don't worry about it. But let's just make a nice curving vine. So we've got a nice little curve there. Cut off the excess. Now you slide your ruler underneath your background and you use your pins and you pin that vine in place, because it'll stay for a couple seconds, but if you don't get it pinned down, then it'll straighten back out before you can get to the sewing machine. So after we get this pinned down, we can add more stems if you want, like little branches coming off with the excess bias tape. So if you wanted to stick in like an extra branch, you could just tuck it in and curve it over and clip it. You know, this is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. Alright, so now we're going to make our berries. They're really fun to make, and there's a dimensional aspect to them, the way that we sew them. Because what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a little seam around the circumference of the circle, and then we're going to draw it tight so all this fabric bunches behind it, and after it's sewn on, it'll pop up a little bit. So it looks like you've stuffed it, but you've only stuffed it, you know, with itself. It's full of itself. These are really fun to make, and just cut out a little stack of circles, go on a road trip, and obviously you can't do it while you're driving. While the person is driving you around, you can just make these little circles. Or maybe you're at the pool and you just sew around the circumference. It doesn't have to be perfect. I do it about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. But, you know, this is pretty forgiving. We're just making berries. So as you come to your last stitch, you see that, you know, I've sewn all around it. Put your middle finger inside, you draw it tight, and then you finish it off with like a little knot. You know, it doesn't have to be really fancy knot or anything. You clip it, spread it out, and press it down, and voila, you have a little polka dot, a little berry. So for the little bitty circles for the center of my poppy, I want them to be really small. With this next blue circle, I don't want them to be quite as small, so I'm just not going to draw it in all the way after I finish the running stitch or the basting stitch. So let's show this one really fast. You can probably make smaller stitches on this, but in the spirit of getting it done. So I learned how to make these berries with Gwen Marston. I went up to her Beaver Island quilt retreat a couple years ago, and I tell you, I didn't know anything really about quilting. And I thought I knew everything, but I found out how little I knew when I was around this awesome woman. And she sat down beside me and she showed me how to make berries and how to do applique, and it opened up a whole new world to me. All right, so here we have this bigger circle. So this one, we're just not going to draw it in quite as much. Kind of pull it around like a little hat. And it'll still be enough to draw in the edges, so you can have a nice edge to stitch when you go to do your applique. So again, just a little simple knot to finish it off. Snip it and kind of tuck it under. This one we might need to take to the ironing board. But anyway, you get the idea that we just didn't pull it in quite so tight, so it's a bigger circle. So the next trick I'm going to show you is with this biggest circle. And with this one we need a cardboard template and tin foil and a very hot iron. Get ready for magic. So for this one we need our cardboard template, and we've cut this to the circle for the finished size. So this has no seam allowance. This is how big we want our circle to be. We've cut our fabric a bit bigger, and we lay it on a piece of tin foil or aluminum foil, whatever you call it. And we need to have our iron really hot, okay? So we just tuck it, we bend it in like this, squish it all down. And if you're using a heavy-duty aluminum foil, you can get a couple circles out of it. Then you press it. Just let that iron really rest on the tin foil. Flip it over, And be careful, obviously it's going to be hot because your iron's hot, right? Okay, so now you just let it wait for a bit. Then you unwrap it. Get ready, it's gonna be so neat. Voila, there's our circle. So the edges are already turned under. So if you don't want to do that drawstring basting stitch and pulling tight, you can do this technique as well. And it makes really good circles, and you don't have to clip anything around the outside. All right, so let's see this stitching. So I've taken my first stitch, my little knot is on the underside, pull it tight, and then you tuck it with your needle. You turn it, needle turn. You take your first stitch, and your second stitch. So the bottom of this flower is, good gravy. The bottom of this flower is the easy part. It's as we get up to these points that it's a little more tricky. So you just take a couple stitches at a time, and then you tuck the raw edge underneath. And you try to get all these threads from getting tangled. So it's just a whip stitch. This is easy, guys. And there's a ton of different needles you can use. I think my eyesight's getting a little worse, so I like my needles to have big eyes so I can see to thread them. All right, so you see right now, these are not teensy tiny stitches. They're decent sized, and on the back, you know, they're less than 1/4 of an inch, but they're not microscopic, so you don't need to have super tiny stitches, I don't think. All right, so now we're just gonna fast forward it until I get to this point, okay? All right, so now I'm at this little tip, and I've already kind of tucked it under, and we see we have this ear piece. There's no way that's gonna fit under in this corner, so with some really sharp scissors, you need to snip it off. All right, and you only snip off, you know, what you see when you made that fold. Maybe take 2 more stitches, 1. This is just kind of an anchoring stitch. Now you tuck that point with the tip of your needle. You just tuck that point under, and then with your index finger, you help with the fold. You pull it tight, and if your thread matches, it'll make the tip, the point, look much prettier. Okay. So now we just shove all that under, tuck it all under, and keep going. Now the next part, it's a little teeny baby bit tricky. It's gonna be this angle right here. This inside point. And I'll be there in just a minute. All right, so now we're getting kind of close. What I need to do is, this is the one time we're going to make a cut into our piece, and that'll just help make this angle a little cleaner. So you just clip it. You know, it's not a big clip. It's like, what? It's between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. Tuck it under with your needle and go to town. And if you don't make this angle beautiful and perfect, don't worry about it too much, because we're gonna put another shape on top of this if you want to. You can leave it just a plain tulip too. There's lots of options. All right, so there you go. You just fire away. Voila. So, I hope this little tutorial on needle turn applique was helpful. It's really fun to do, and if you're intimidated by it, there's no reason to be. It's very easy and it's very relaxing. You don't have to do a whole vine, like a whole border with it. You can just simply make a little block to go into your quilt. It's so nice to add just a little bit of applique to patchwork, because it really just gives it like a whole nother technique, and it's beautiful. While I was at Quilt Market last month, I saw that there's a lot of applique being done in modern quilts right now. And you know, this is definitely a skill that you should try, because it's a lot funner than you might think. So I'm going to have the little template pieces, this tulip and the poppy and the leaves. Those are going to be available on my website. There'll be a little free download, so you have to go to my website. It's tiacurtisquilts.com. Go to the shop, go to patterns, and there will be the free PDF for you to purchase or download, or however it works. But I'd love to see what you make. Tag me, or you can use the hashtag KCMQGBOEOM. I'll write it down below so you can see it. But yeah, hey, have fun sewing this summer. This is a great way to spend your summer.